Hello, crafty friends! It's Alicia here with a project for Tailored Expressions. In today's video, I'm going to be showing you two different ways to use the same stenciled piece. Featured on today's cards is the Bitty Bouquets Stamp and Stencil combo and Bitty Bouquets Bonus Blooms 2. For the sentiments, I will be using Mini to Mighty Occasions with the coordinating die set. For die cutting, I got out Circle Stacklets, Frame and Frame 2 cutting plate, and A2 Layer Stacklets. And I'll also be adding some extra texture with the cross-stitch embossing folder. I will be using Sugar Cube, Granny Smith, and Rock Candy cardstock, along with some TE vellum. For inks, I got out Lollipop, Granny Smith, Rock Candy, and Plum Punch. The tools I will be using are the exclusive TE Teal Misty and Just Press tool, along with coordinating colored blender brushes. I will be using a variety of adhesives to hold everything together, and to add some sparkle, I will be using glitter drip drops in Plum Punch and Rock Candy. Let's get crafty! To get started, I will be using the Bitty Bouquets stamp on 2 pieces of sugar cube cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I am using Granny Smith ink for these, and to get this set up, I put a little adhesive on the back of my piece of sugar cube, and then I made sure to use a spot on the Misty that I could easily remember to put that in place. Once that was tacked down, I put the red rubber stamp face down on top of the piece of cardstock, and I tried to lift up the edges to make sure it was nice and centered. Once that's in place, I can then pick it up with the door of the Misty, ink it up, and stamp it. To help get a nice impression, I did bring in the Just Press tool, and that just glides so smoothly over the door of the Misty and helps me add extra pressure. I did decide for this that I wanted my green a little bit darker, so I added a second layer before bringing in that second piece of sugar cube and doing the same thing. The Bitty Bouquet stamp does come with a set of 2 stencils that you can add decoration, but I will be using the Bitty Bouquets Bonus Blooms 2 stencil set, which is a 3-piece layered stencil. This is a fun way to have that same base stamp set, but different ways to decorate it. I'm going to get stencil number 1 set up, and the great thing about this set is there are some etched lines on the stencil that coordinate with the image that was stamped onto the cardstock. So I start by aligning that first, and once I have it in place, I just use a few pieces of removable tape to temporarily tack that down. For this first layer, I am using Plum Punch ink with a purple blender brush, and once I have some ink on my brush, I use clockwise and counterclockwise circles to fill up the open areas on the stamped piece. Once I like the shading or the darkness of the ink, I'm going to remove the stencil but leave one piece of tape in place for a hinge, and then I brought in the second piece of cardstock and use that same color. After I finish adding the Plum Punch ink to my second stamped piece, I'm going to remove stencil number 1. This time I do leave the sugar cube piece right where it's at. For stencil number 2, I will be using Rock Candy ink and the blue blender brush, and just like with stencil number 1, I start by aligning the etched areas with the stamp underneath. Now keep in mind you might have to adjust it just a little bit, but once that is taped down, and I am using that same removable tape, I go ahead and add the Rock Candy to both of the pieces. I use Lollipop ink for the final layer on each piece. These stamp and stencil combos are going to be great for mass producing cards. However many stamped bases you make, you just use this same process to add color to each of them. As promised in the intro, I'm going to show you how to take this same piece and turn it into 2 different cards. On the first stamped piece, I will be using the 4th from largest circle stacklet and the 3rd from largest A2 layer stacklet. For added color, I got out a piece of Rock Candy cardstock, and I will be cutting this out with the 2nd from largest A2 layer stacklet. Here's a look at both pieces layered together. At this point is where I thought the rock candy piece needed some extra texture. So for that, I used the cross-stitch embossing folder. And again, it's subtle, but it adds just a little bit to the card. For card number 2, I will be using the second from largest A2 layer stacklet on the stamped and stenciled piece, and on the piece of rock candy, I am choosing the second from largest die from Frame in Frame 2. Eventually on this card, I want to add a die cut sentiment inside the frame, but I thought the background might be a little too bold. So off camera, I cut a piece of TE vellum just slightly smaller than the frame. And you'll see here that you can still see those beautiful flowers, but it mutes it just a little bit. I do want to add a little dimension to this card, so I'm going to pop the frame up off the vellum, and to do that I brought in TE foam sticky strips. These are a great width to go behind that pretty frame where you won't see it from the front. Now this isn't a shaker card, so not every single bit has to be filled in, but I did go ahead and fill up the back pretty much completely. Once the tape was in place, I pulled the release paper and then I added the vellum to the back. For the sentiments on today's cards, I'm going to be using Hey There from the Mini to Mighty Occasion stamp set. And the fun thing is I can use the same sentiment in different sizes. This set actually has 4 different sayings in 3 sizes. I set up both of the stamps on a scrap of sugar cube, making sure to keep them far enough apart so I can use the coordinating dies here in just a little bit. And just like with that background stamp, I'm going to be using Granny Smith ink, and to get a little bit of a darker shade, I did ink them up and stamp them twice. I took these off camera to cut them with the coordinating dies, and while I was doing that, I did cut a copy of the smaller sentiment that I'm using, which was actually the middle size in the stamp set, out of Granny Smith. I wanted to use this extra piece as a little shadow for the sentiment, so I added it to the back with liquid glue, and this way it's going to help it stand out from the background. All of the pieces are ready, so now I can start assembling the cards. On this first one, I added foam tape to the back of the stenciled piece for some dimension, but before I placed that onto the embossed panel, I did add some liquid glue. This way I have a little bit of wiggle time to get that adjusted and get a nice even border. I did the same thing with the sentiment, and I tried to get that nice and centered in the circle opening. Once that was in place, I used liquid glue, and then I added this panel to the front of a Granny Smith top folding card base. And again, because of the liquid glue, I have a little bit of time to adjust and get a nice even border. For card number 2, I prepared a second top fold Granny Smith card base, and I got the stenciled piece added to the front center just flat down with liquid glue, and then I got the frame added as well, and because there was already the foam tape on the back, it already had some dimension. Once again, using liquid glue to get the frame nice and centered. Finally, I removed the release paper from the foam on the back of the sentiment, and I added that to the top half of the frame. To add a little sparkle to the cards, I brought in glitter drip drops in rock candy and plum punch. On the card with the scalloped frame, I had originally thought about making a shaker card, but I knew if I tried to get these inside of a frame, I would have to spend a lot of time making sure they were all flipped over so that they were sitting the correct way since they are flat backed. So instead of doing that, I'm going to do a faux shaker. So I added some dots of liquid glue randomly around the sentiment but within the frame, and then I added different sizes of the rock candy to those dots of glue. Once those pieces were all in place, I added the remaining glitter drops back into the bottle, and since I used the glass board buddy, it was super easy to do. I did the same thing on this card with the Plum Punch glitter drip drops, and then off camera I added some sparkle to the second card as well, and here are some close-up looks. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch today's video. If you enjoyed the process, a thumbs up is appreciated. And if you're not already a subscriber, we do hope you'll click on the button below so you're the first to know about our latest videos. To find out more about the products I used today, you can check out the links in the description box below or visit the Tailored Expressions online store at tailoredexpressions.com.